My name's Ethan Caldwell, and I turned 35 last Friday. Not one of those big milestone birthdays folks make a fuss over, but my wife, Rachel, well, soon-to-be ex-wife, it kept dropping hints all week that she had something special cooked up. She was acting strange, though, real giddy and secretive, always tapping away on her phone with this little smirk. I figured maybe she was planning a surprise barbecue or something low-key but nice. We've been hitting a rough patch lately. Nothing loud or dramatic, just this quiet distance that settles in like damp rot. I thought she might be trying to patch things up. We've been hitched for 7 years, met back in college. She was this sharp, artsy type from a well-off family. Her dad, Victor, owned a chain of car dealerships, and I was just a regular guy, scraping by on a baseball scholarship and odd jobs. Total opposites, but it worked for a while. Her folks never took to me, though. Victor would always toss out these snide remarks about my small-town roots over Thanksgiving turkey, and her mom, Diane, acted like my job managing a hardware store was some kind of charity gig, even after I climbed up to district supervisor. Rachel, meanwhile, kept up this Pinterest perfect image of our life online, posting pics of our modest duplex with captions about cozy vibes, like she was slumming it for likes. Always comparing us to her brother, Nate, who married into some tech startup money and lived in a house with more bathrooms than I've got cousins. The last few months, things got weirder. Rachel started spending more time at her parents' place, coming home late from gallery events, with this faint whiff of some pricey cologne I didn't recognize. She'd get these texts that lit up her face in a way I hadn't seen in ages. I'm not dumb. I had a hunch something was off, but I kept telling myself if I just pushed harder at work, maybe landed that regional manager spot, we'd get back on track. So when she told me to head to her folks' place after work on my birthday for a surprise, I didn't think much of it. Sure, their fancy brick colonial wasn't my idea of a party spot, but I figured maybe she'd talk them into playing nice for once. I pulled up around 6, still in my work boots from a long shift. Yeah, I had to work my own birthday, that's the grind for you, and Rachel met me at the door. She had this tight, fake smile, the kind that doesn't touch the eyes. I stepped inside, and the living room was packed. Her parents, Nate, a few aunts and uncles, some family friends I vaguely knew from their Christmas parties. They were all holding wine glasses, standing around like they were waiting for a show to start. The air felt thick, everyone staring at me with these weird, expectant looks. I thought, okay, maybe they chipped in for a new truck or something nuts like that. Then Rachel cleared her throat and said, "Ethan, we've got a big surprise for your birthday." Victor let out this low, smug chuckle, and I swear it sounded rehearsed. She reached behind the couch and pulled out this legal-looking envelope. For a second, I pictured something wild, like a deed to a cabin or a joke lottery ticket. Then she hit me with it, clear as day. Surprise. I'm leaving you for someone who doesn't drag me down. The room went dead quiet, except for Victor, who busted out laughing like he'd been holding it in all night. I just stood there, brain scrambling to catch up, while Rachel shoved the envelope into my hands. Divorce papers, already filled out, just needing my John Hancock. Victor piped up, still grinning. We always knew she'd settle for less with you. Good to see her finally wise up. Diane popped open a bottle of red wine, some fancy label they'd probably bragged about, and started pouring rounds like it was a toast to my funeral. They'd planned this whole thing, turned my birthday into a damn victory party for kicking me to the curb. I didn't know what they wanted, me to yell, bawl, storm out. Instead, I felt this cold calm wash over me. I looked at Rachel, at her smug family, and it was like I was outside my own body, watching some poor sap take the hit. I said, "Got a pen?" Rachel blinked, thrown off, like she'd scripted me begging her to stay. Victor handed me one of his shiny fountain pens, probably cost more than my rent, and I walked over to their polished oak dining table, spread those papers out, and signed every line. No fuss, no words, just the scratch of ink on paper. The room got real quiet, a couple folks shifting awkwardly, someone coughing. When I was done, I handed the pen back to Victor, looked Rachel square in the eye, and said, "Happy birthday to me." Huh? Best present yet. Then I turned and walked out, keys jingling in my pocket. Their stunned faces burned into my head as I shut the door behind me. I climbed into my beat-up Ford, cranked the engine, and just drove. No plan, no destination, just asphalt and headlights. Ended up at this hole-in-the-wall bar off the highway, the kind with sticky floors and a jukebox that only plays Hank Williams. Ordered a beer, then a shot of bourbon, staring at my phone as Rachel's text started rolling in. "Why didn't you fight? You're just walking away? This proves I was right about you." I downed another shot, and something shifted. The shock faded, and this slow, steady anger took root, not the loud kind, but the kind that simmers, sharpens, makes you think real clear. They thought they'd broken me. They had no clue what I was about to do. So there I was, sitting in that dive bar off Route 17, nursing my third bourbon while the jukebox wailed some old Johnny Cash tune about heartache. My phone kept buzzing on the sticky countertop, Rachel's text piling up like storm clouds. "Ethan, say something. You're making this worse by ignoring me. I didn't think you'd just give up like that." "Give up? Lady, you served me divorce papers like a birthday cake and had your family cheer while I cut the slice. What did she expect? Me dropping to my knees, begging for another chance?" I let the phone sit there, screen glowing, and ordered another drink. The bartender, this grizzled guy named Hank with a beard like steel wool, slid the glass over and said, "Rough night, huh?" I just nodded, not in the mood to spill my guts to a stranger. But the bourbon loosened something up, and that cold anger I'd felt back at Victor's place started burning hotter. Not the kind where you smash a chair or punch a wall, nah. This was deeper, quieter, the kind that makes you want to settle scores slow and smart. See, 7 years with Rachel and her high-mighty clan gave me more than just a ring on my finger. I'd picked up dirt, stuff they didn't think a small-town nobody like me would notice or remember. Like how Victor's dealerships always had cash flow issues he'd laugh off at family dinners, but I'd overheard him chewing out his accountant about moving numbers around. Or how Nate's wife, Tara, bragged about her startup husband while I knew she'd been sneaking around with their landscaper, caught her giggling in the garage with him one Easter. And Rachel? She wasn't exactly subtle with those late-night work calls the past few months, her voice all soft and flirty through the bedroom wall while I pretended to sleep. I'd kept quiet, figuring I'd win her back by being the good husband. No? That silence was my MO. Around midnight, I paid my tab and stepped into the cool March air. My truck's engine sputtered to life, and I drove to my buddy Caleb's place, old high school pal, works construction, lives in a bachelor pad that smells like sawdust and cheap beer. He didn't ask questions when I showed up, just tossed me a blanket and pointed at the couch. I crashed hard, but my brain wouldn't quit. By morning, I'd made up my mind. I wasn't just going to roll over and let Rachel and her folks dance on my grave. I had moves to make. First thing I did was call my friend Pete. He's a lawyer, not one of those slick TV ad types, but a guy who knows family law like the back of his hand and loves sticking it to people who deserve it. I laid it all out. The birthday ambush, the divorce papers, the champagne toasts. Pete laughed, not at me, but at them. They really thought you'd just slink off, huh? Oh, we're gonna have fun with this. He told me to start gathering anything I could, bank statements, texts, whatever might show Rachel's been stepping out. Lucky for me, we'd shared a laptop for years, and she never logged out of her cloud account. Rookie mistake. Next, I hit the bank, pulled my half out of our joint savings, left hers alone, I ain't a thief, and opened a new account. Then I rented a storage unit across town and spent the afternoon hauling my stuff out of our duplex while Rachel was probably sipping mimosas with her mom, figuring I was curled up crying somewhere. My tools, my baseball gear, the old record player my dad left me, all safe and sound by sundown. I didn't take anything she'd fight over, just what was mine. Let her keep the overpriced couch she'd maxed out our credit card for. By evening, my phone was a war zone. Rachel's text had gone from snarky to confused to downright pissed. Where are you? Why's your stuff gone? You can't just disappear like this. Oh, I could, and I did. Pete called me back, said he'd filed some preliminary paperwork to counter her divorce push. Turns out, she'd checked a box claiming irreconcilable differences, but Pete figured we could prove infidelity if I had the goods. And I was pretty sure I did. I'd snagged screenshots from that laptop before I left. Flirty messages between her and some guy named Marcus, consultant she'd been meeting for projects. Hotel names, dinner plans, heart emojis, the works. I sent it all to Pete, and he said, "Buddy, this is gold." She's screwed. I holed up at Caleb's for a few days, laying low while I figured out my next step. Work gave me a week off when I told my boss I was dealing with personal stuff. He's a good guy, didn't pry. Rachel kept calling, leaving voicemails that got wilder each time. "Ethan, this isn't funny. We need to talk about the house. You're acting like a child." I didn't reply. Let her stew. Meanwhile, I started reaching out to folks, old teammates, coworkers, even a cousin who's tight with the local paper. Told them my side, kept it simple. Rachel blindsided me with a divorce party at her folks' place. Pretty messed up, right? Word spreads fast in a town like ours. A week after the birthday blowout, I was sipping coffee at Caleb's kitchen table when Rachel's tone shifted. Her latest text read, "This isn't how I wanted it to go. Can we please just meet?" Too late, sweetheart. I'd already rented a little studio apartment downtown, nothing fancy, just a bed, a TV, and a view of the river. Moved in that afternoon with a duffel bag and a folding chair. Sat there alone, watching the water ripple under the streetlights, and felt something I hadn't in years, free. They thought they'd crush me. They didn't know I was just getting started. I assume you meant carry on with the second chapter, or perhaps continue with the third chapter. Since I've already delivered chapter 2, I'll move forward with chapter 3, keeping the story flowing in the same style. First person, simple American guy vibe, no abbreviations, over 3,000 characters, and ready for an AI voiceover. Here's the next part of Ethan Caldwell's journey. Chapter 3, Digging In. So, I've been crashing in that little studio apartment for about a week, getting used to the hum of the river outside my window, and the fact that my kitchen was just a hot plate and a mini fridge. It wasn't much, but it was mine, and that felt good after years of living in Rachel's shadow. My phone was still blowing up with her messages. Guess she didn't like me going radio silent, but I wasn't ready to deal with her yet. I had bigger fish to fry, and I was starting to figure out how to cook them just right. Pete, my lawyer buddy, called me that Monday morning while I was heating up instant coffee. He sounded like a kid on Christmas. "Ethan, you sitting down? That stuff you sent me, those texts between Rachel and Marcus? It's a damn jackpot. She's been playing house with this guy for at least 6 months, maybe longer. We've got dates, locations, the whole shebang. I grinned into my mug. See, Marcus wasn't just some random fling. He was a consultant her dad, Victor, had brought in to juice up the dealership numbers, some slick city type with a fancy watch and a handshake that lasted too long. I'd met him once at a company picnic Rachel dragged me to, and he'd looked at me like I was the hired help. Now I knew why. Pete kept going. Here's the plan. We let her think she's got the upper hand with this divorce. Then we hit her with the infidelity angle. No kids, no joint business, your name's on the duplex lease, and you've got steady income. She's gonna push for half of everything, maybe even spousal support, but this Marcus stuff? It's her trump card. Judges around here don't take kindly to cheaters trying to cash out. I told him to do whatever he thought best. Pete's the type who lives for this, tearing apart smug folks who think they're untouchable. I trusted him to swing the bat. I just keep feeding him the pitches. Meanwhile, I decided to get my life in order. Work was steady. I'd been at the hardware chain for a decade, and that regional manager spot was still in play. My boss, Jim, called to check in, said he'd heard through the grapevine about my situation. Small towns, man, gossip moves faster than a brush fire. I told him I was fine, just needed to focus. He said, take your time, but that promotion's yours if you want it. You've earned it. That lit a fire under me. Rachel always acted like my job was some dead-end gig, but it had kept us afloat while she flitted between art projects that never sold. Time to prove her wrong. I also started digging through that cloud account she'd left wide open. Found more than just text photos, too. Rachel and Marcus at some swanky rooftop bar she'd told me was a work thing. Another of them at a hotel pool, her in a bikini I didn't recognize, him with his arm around her like he owned her. I saved it all, sent it to Pete, and felt that slow anger sharpen into something useful. Then I stumbled on a folder labeled Taxes 2023. Not taxes, screenshots of Victor's emails. Stuff about creative financing and off-the-books deals for his dealerships. I ain't no accountant, but it looked shady as hell. I forwarded that to Pete too, with a note. Might be nothing, might be leverage. He texted back, you're a genius, Caldwell. That night, I grabbed a beer and sat on my rickety fire escape, my version of a balcony, watching the river roll by. Felt like I was finally breathing after being underwater for years. Started hitting the gym, too. Not to impress anybody, just to burn off the tension. First day, I nearly dropped a dumbbell on my foot, but by week's end, I was lifting more than I had since college ball. Felt good to sweat out the mess instead of stewing in it. Rachel's family, though, they weren't done. Her brother, Nate, called me out of the blue, voice all oily and fake friendly. Hey, man, just checking in. Rachel's pretty torn up. Maybe you two could talk it out. I cut him off. She talked plenty at your folks' place, Nate. I signed what you wanted. What's left to say? He hemmed and hawed. Then let slip something juicy. Look, Dad's worried about how this looks for the family. The dealership's got a big sale coming up, and drama doesn't sell cars. Bingo. Victor's empire was their weak spot. I hung up, filed that away for later. Divorce talks heated up fast. Rachel's lawyer, a weaselly guy named Gordon, sent Pete a list of demands. Half the duplex equity, my truck, even part of my 401k. Pete laughed when he read it to me. She's dreaming. With what we've got, she'll be lucky to keep her designer purses. We countered with a lowball offer, dangling the affair evidence like a carrot. Gordon got quiet real quick. Pete said they'd try to drag it out, but we had time, and the upper hand. Then came the curveball. I was leaving the gym one evening when I saw Rachel's silver BMW parked across from my building. She didn't get out, just sat there, staring up at my window. My gut twisted, not out of love, but out of knowing she wasn't going to let this go easy. I ducked inside, locked the door, and checked my phone. New text. Ethan, I didn't mean for it to end like this. Can we just sit down? Please. I stared at it, thumb hovering over the reply button, then set the phone down. Nope. She'd had her party. This was my turn now. So, there I was, peering through the blinds of my studio apartment, watching Rachel's silver BMW idling across the street like some ghost that wouldn't leave. It was late, the river outside reflecting streetlights in a way that made everything feel a little unreal. My phone buzzed again, another text. Ethan, I'm not leaving until we talk. I messed up, okay. I could have ignored her forever, let her sit out there till the battery died, but something in me snapped. Not pity, not love, just tired of her thinking she could still call the shots. I grabbed my jacket, headed downstairs, and tapped on her window. She jumped, fumbled with the lock, and rolled it down. Up close, she looked rough, hair tangled, eyes puffy like she'd been crying for days. Ethan, thank God, she started, voice shaky. I didn't think you'd come down. I crossed my arms, kept my distance. You've got 5 minutes. Say what you gotta say. She launched into this ramble. How Marcus had turned out to be a snake, how she'd been wrong to trust him, how her folks had pushed her into the divorce thinking it'd free her up for something better. She actually said, I thought you'd fight for me, prove you cared. I laughed, couldn't help it. Fight for you? After you and your family turned my birthday into a circus? You're kidding, right? Her face crumpled, but I wasn't done. You don't get it, Rachel. I'm not your fallback plan. You made your bed, go sleep in it. She begged me to reconsider, Said she'd do anything to fix it. I just shook my head, told her to take it up with my lawyer, and walked back inside. Watched from the window as she sat there a while longer, then finally peeled out. Felt like a weight lifted off my chest. Next day, Pete called with an update. Her lawyer sweating. Man, that affair evidence has them spooked. They're hinting at a settlement, probably want to keep it quiet before Victor's dealership takes a PR hit. I told him to push hard, no spousal support, split the duplex fair, and I keep my truck and savings. Pete said, you got it. They'll fold soon. Sure enough, by week's end, Gordon sent over a revised offer. Rachel keeps her car and clothes. I get the duplex and my stuff. No cash changes hands. Pete grinned over the phone. Told you we had him by the short hairs. I decided it was time to level up. Took Jim up on that regional manager gig, came with a solid raise and a company truck. Moved out of the studio into a small rental house a few miles out. Nothing fancy, just a 2-bedroom with a porch and a patch of grass. Started fixing it up, painted the walls, built a workbench in the garage for this side gig I'd been kicking around. Restoring old tools and selling them online. Rachel used to call my tinkering hillbilly nonsense, but my first sale, a refurbished hammer, netted me $50. Felt better than any paycheck. Word got around town about the divorce stunt. Folks at work, old buddies, even the cashier at the gas station started giving me these nods, like, you're better off, man. I reconnected with my pal Caleb. Rachel always hated him cause he'd show up with a 6-pack instead of some fancy wine. We started fishing on weekends, just me, him, and a cooler of beer by the lake. First time in years I wasn't worried about impressing anybody. Then Rachel's family started unraveling. Nate texted me one night, all casual like, hey, Ethan, Dad's business is taking a hit. Maybe you could put in a good word with some folks. I didn't reply, but I smiled. Those shady emails I'd found? I'd passed him to a buddy who knows a guy at the state tax office, not to snitch, just to ask questions. Next thing I know, Victor's dealerships are under audit. Karma's a hell of a thing. A month later, I'm on my porch with a coffee when Rachel's BMW rolls up again. She steps out, looking thinner, wearing jeans instead of her usual designer getup. Ethan, I'm sorry, she says, voice breaking. Marcus dumped me. Dad cut me off. I've got nothing. Can we talk about us? I sipped my coffee, let her stand there. There's no us, Rachel. You wanted out, now you're out. Good luck. She stared, tears welling up, then got back in her car and left. Didn't feel good, didn't feel bad, just done. Here's Chapter 5 of Ethan Caldwell's story, picking up right where Chapter 4 left off. It's over 3,000 characters, written in the first person, simple American guy style, with no abbreviations and full details for an AI voiceover. Let's keep it rolling. Chapter 5, Building Back. So, Rachel peeled out of my driveway that morning, her BMW's taillights fading into the dawn, and I just stood there on my porch, coffee going cold in my hands. Didn't feel like a victory, didn't feel like a loss, just a door slamming shut for good. I'd spent 7 years trying to be the guy she wanted, bending over backwards to fit into her world, and now I was free to figure out who I actually was. Weird thing is, I kinda liked the guy I was starting to see in the mirror. Work was my anchor. That regional manager job wasn't just a title, it meant running 6 stores, hiring crews, making sure shelves stayed stocked from here to the county line. Jim handed me the keys to a company truck, a newer Ford with leather seats and a radio that actually worked, and told me, you're the guy now, Ethan. Don't let me down. I didn't plan to. First week, I drove to every store, met the teams, fixed a busted freezer in the back of one myself just to show I wasn't above getting my hands dirty. Pay bump was nice, too, enough to sock some away and still have cash for my tool flipping gig. That side hustle was picking up steam. I'd scour flea markets and estate sales on weekends, grabbing rusty wrenches and old saws nobody wanted, then spent nights in my garage sanding 'em down, oiling 'em up, making 'em shine like new. Posted pics online, nothing fancy, just a phone camera and a workbench, and folks started buying. Made $100 one week, then 200 the next. Started a little page called Caldwell's Classics, and before I knew it, I had regulars asking for custom jobs. Rachel used to laugh at me tinkering with junk, now that junk was paying for my groceries. Life settled into a rhythm. I'd work days, fix tools at night, fish with Caleb on Saturdays. Bought a cheap grill for the porch and started cooking burgers instead of microwaving frozen crap. Even planted a couple tomato plants out back, not 'cause I'm some farmer, just 'cause I wanted to see if I could keep 'em alive. They're still kicking, so I guess I've got a green thumb after all. Nights got quiet, but not lonely. I'd sit out front with a beer, watching fireflies blink over the grass, and feel this peace I hadn't known since I was a kid. Rachel's family, though, they were imploding. Caleb heard from a guy who knows a guy that Victor's audit turned up some ugly stuff, fake invoices, under-the-table cash to dodge taxes. Dealerships started losing customers. Folks don't trust a crook to sell him a car. Nate's startup brother-in-law pulled his money out, and last I heard, their big house was on the market. Couldn't help but think of those emails I'd found. Didn't feel guilty, just glad I'd kept my nose clean. Pete said it might even help our divorce case if it went public, but Rachel's lawyer was already waving the white flag. Then, about 2 months after she showed up begging, Rachel called again. I was in the garage, polishing a vintage plane, when my phone rang. Didn't want to answer, But curiosity got me. Ethan, she said, voice small, I'm in a bad spot. Marcus took off with some of Dad's files, stuff that could sink us. I've got no job, no place to stay. Can I crash with you, just for a bit? I set the plane down, wiped my hands on a rag. What happened to your folks' place? She hesitated. They're selling it. Dad's broke, Mom's a mess. I've been couch hopping, but nobody wants me around long. I pictured her, the girl who'd once turned up her nose at my duplex, now homeless and desperate. Part of me, the old Ethan, wanted to say yes, fix her problems like I always had. But I wasn't that guy anymore. Rachel, I said, you've got family, friends, something. I'm not your safety net. Figure it out. She started crying, saying she'd changed, she'd learned her lesson. I cut her off. You learned too late. Take care. Hung up, went back to my plane. Didn't even feel mad, just done. Next day, Pete called with the final divorce papers. Signed him at his office, shook his hand, and walked out a free man. Kept the duplex, rented it out for extra cash, kept my truck, my savings, everything I'd built. Rachel got her car and a pile of debt I wasn't touching. Felt like I'd dodged a bullet and won the lottery all at once. Drove home, cracked a beer, and toasted myself on the porch. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange, and I thought, this is what winning feels like. So, the divorce was final, and I was sitting pretty on my porch that evening, sipping a cold one and watching the sun dip below the trees. The papers were signed, the duplex was mine, already had a tenant lined up, and I'd built a life that didn't need Rachel or her family's approval. Felt like I'd climbed out of a hole I didn't even know I'd been in. My tool business was humming along, too. Sold a set of chisels for $150 that morning, and I had a guy in Ohio asking for a custom axe handle. Life was good, simple, mine. But Rachel wasn't done haunting me. A couple weeks later, I was grilling some steaks out back. Finally got the hang of that cheap propane rig, when my phone lit up with a text. Her number. Ethan, I know you hate me, but I'm desperate. Can we meet? Just coffee. Please. I stared at it, fork halfway to my mouth, and thought about deleting it. She'd burn me bad, and I didn't owe her a damn thing. But something, maybe curiosity, maybe just being a sucker, made me type back. One coffee. Tomorrow, 10, at Dusty's. Don't be late. Sent it, finished my steak, and wondered what I just stepped into. Dusty's is this old diner downtown, greasy spoons, chipped mugs, the kind of place Rachel used to wrinkle her nose at. I got there early, grabbed a booth by the window, and ordered black coffee. She walked in at 10 on the dot, and man, she looked like a different person. No makeup, hair pulled back in a messy knot, wearing a faded hoodie and jeans with a hole in the knee. The Rachel I knew wouldn't have been caught dead like that. She slid into the seat across from me, hands fidgeting, and said, thanks for this. I didn't think you'd show. Almost didn't, I said, sipping my coffee. What's going on? She took a deep breath, and it all spilled out. Marcus hadn't just ditched her. He'd sold Victor's shady files to a competitor, some big auto chain looking to muscle in on the dealership market. The audit turned into a full-on investigation, and Victor's business was circling the drain. He'd lost everything, house, cars, reputation, and Diane had left him, moved in with her sister in Florida. Rachel got cut off when the money dried up, lost her job cause it was tied to Daddy's connections, and now she was crashing in a friend's basement, barely scraping by. I've got nothing, she said, voice cracking. No family, no plan. I don't know what to do. I leaned back, letting her words sink in. Part of me wanted to feel sorry for her, girl I'd loved once, now a wreck. But the bigger part remembered her standing there with divorce papers, her dad laughing, her mom pouring wine. Sounds rough, I said, keeping my tone flat. Why's this my problem? She looked down, twisting a napkin. It's not. I thought maybe you'd help. For old time's sake. I know I don't deserve it. You're right, I said. You don't. She flinched, but I kept going. You and your folks treated me like dirt for years, then threw a party to celebrate kicking me out. Now you're here, cause the world turned on you? Nah, Rachel. You don't get to crawl back when it's convenient. Her eyes welled up, but she nodded, like she'd expected it. I'm sorry, she whispered. Not just for this, for everything. I was wrong about you. I shrugged. Yeah, you were. Coffee's on me. Good luck. Got up, tossed a few bucks on the table, and walked out. Didn't look back. Driving home, I felt lighter. Not smug, not vengeful, just clear. She wasn't my burden anymore. That night, I posted a pic of a restored hatchet on my tool page, sold in 20 minutes. Caleb swung by with a pizza, and we watched a ball game on my beat-up couch, laughing at the announcers like old times. Next day, I heard from a buddy at the hardware store that Victor's main dealership shut down, bank took it. Nate was scrambling to sell off inventory, but nobody was buying. Couldn't say I was surprised. A week later, I got a call from an unknown number. Picked up, and it was Victor. First time I'd heard his voice since the birthday mess, and he sounded like a man who'd aged 20 years. Ethan, he said, all gruff and hesitant, I owe you an apology. We were awful to you. I'm in a bind, business is gone. Need a favor. You've got connections now, right? I almost laughed. The guy who'd snickered while I signed my marriage away, begging me for help? Victor, I said, I've got no favors for you. You made your mess. Clean it up. Hung up, went back to sanding a wrench. Felt good to say no. So, that call from Victor was the last nail in the coffin of my old life. I hung up on him, went back to sanding that wrench, and felt this quiet settle over me, like the dust after a storm finally clears. It had been about 7 months since Rachel blindsided me with those divorce papers on my birthday, her family toasting my downfall with wine glasses in hand. Now here I was, in a rental house I'd made my own, with a job I was good at, a side gig that paid, and a future that didn't hinge on anybody else's opinion. Funny how the worst day of your life can turn into the best thing that ever happened. Work kept me busy. The regional manager gig had me driving all over, checking stores, training new hires, keeping the wheels turning. Jim called me into his office one morning, said, "Ethan, you're killing it. Thinking of bumping you up to oversee the whole district next year, bigger territory, bigger paycheck. You in?" I shook his hand, said hell yes. Meant more hours, sure, but it also meant I'd earn something on my own terms. Took the crew out for beers that night to celebrate, first round on me. Felt like a boss in the best way. My tool business was booming, too. Caldwell's Classics had a steady stream of buyers now, guys fixing up barns, collectors, even a lady who wanted a custom mallet for her dad's birthday. I built a proper workbench in the garage, rigged up some lights, and started posting videos of the process online. Nothing fancy, just me in a flannel shirt, talking through how I brought an old axe back to life. Went viral once, 50,000 views, and orders doubled. Made enough to buy a used pickup for hauling fines, painted it matte black, cause why not? Rachel used to call my tinkering a waste of time. Now it was my ticket to something better. The house felt like home. Got a mutt named Rusty from the shelter, big, shaggy thing with one ear that flops funny. He chews my boots if I leave him out, but he's the best company I've had in years. Planted more in the yard, peppers, zucchini, turned into a regular farmer, I guess. Caleb came over most weekends, bringing beer or a fishing rod, and we'd sit on the porch swapping stories till the stars came out. Reconnected with my sister, who just lives a couple hours away, brought her kids by one Sunday. They ran around with Rusty while we grilled hot dogs. First time in forever I felt like I had family that mattered. Rachel's world kept crumbling. Heard through the grapevine, small town, can't avoid it, that she'd moved into a cheap apartment on the edge of town, working part-time at a coffee shop. Victor's dealerships were gone, sold off in pieces to pay debts, and he was living in a trailer park last I heard. Diane never came back from Florida. Nate's marriage tanked after the startup money dried up. Guess Tara wasn't in it for love. I didn't go looking for updates, but they found me anyway. Didn't feel good or bad, just distant, like watching a movie I'd already seen. Then, one rainy Thursday night, I'm flipping burgers in the kitchen when my doorbell rings. Rusty barks, I wipe my hands, and there's Rachel on my stoop, soaked to the bone. No car this time, I guess she lost that too. "Ethan," she said, teeth chattering, "I've got nowhere else to go. I've been sleeping at the shop, but they fired me today. Please, just one night." She looked small, broken, nothing like the woman who'd handed me divorce papers with a smirk. I stood there, rain drumming on the awning, and thought about it. Old me would have let her in, fixed her up, tried to save her. New me knew better. "Rachel," I said, "I'm sorry you're hurting, but this ain't my fight anymore. There's a shelter downtown clean, safe. I'll give you a ride if you need it." Her face fell, but she nodded. "I get it. I don't blame you." I grabbed an umbrella, drove her the 10 minutes in silence, dropped her off with a 20 for food. Watched her shuffle inside, then headed home. Rusty greeted me with a wagging tail, and I finished my burger, rain tapping the windows like it was washing the past away. A month later, I met someone. Her name's Lauren, works at the lumberyard, short hair, laughs like she means it. We started talking over a busted pallet I was picking up for a project, ended up grabbing coffee, then dinner. She's got no fancy family, no pretensions, just a solid woman who likes dogs and doesn't mind my grease-stained hands. We're taking it slow, but it's the first time in years I've felt a spark that's real. So that's it, 7 months from getting gut-punched to standing tall. Got a house, a dog, a job I'm proud of, and a life I built from scratch. Rachel and her folks thought they'd bury me that day. Instead, they handed me the shovel to dig my way out. I'm not mad anymore, just grateful. Life's funny like that. You think you're done, but sometimes you're just getting started.